Welcome to worship at the McPherson Church of the Brethren. We are an open and affirming congregation that strives to be hospitable and attentive to all of creation. We do not always meet that goal, and we have our share of ups and downs. But in the midst of it all, we continue to listen to God's call on our individual lives and the life of this congregation. We continue to seek to follow Jesus, peacefully, simply, together. We are humbled you have chosen to worship with us. Welcome.
Good morning, everybody. I want to know who took the picture of the spider web. Was that an Eric thing? Thank you so much, Eric. Eric and Chris provide our wonderful images that we see on our screen every Sunday morning. Thank you so much. This is our time for announcements, introductions. I'd like to start with Catherine.
Good morning. I just wanted to remind everybody, if you didn't know, that next Sunday is McPherson College weekend, the capstone in the McPherson College. So if you think parking is interesting right now, just wait for next weekend. Also, for a long time, we haven't combined with the college on our Sunday morning worship, but next Sunday, the college choir will be here with our choir. It's going to be fun. The piano will be in front, and the lectern will be over there, and there'll be a brass ensemble led by a student up in the old choir balcony. So it's going to be a great Sunday. So I encourage you, if you're able to walk, you might want to park over in the gym parking lot and come through the alley.
And Jerry?
Good morning. How many of you love the fall weather? How many of you enjoy going out to the country, to this little beautiful place called the Wagner Ranch, and having Bruce take us around on hayrack rides, and maybe we could baptize someone real quick? Right? Well, you're going to get your chance. Maybe not the baptism part, but you get your chance this evening. 5:30 to 7:30, we're having the Fall Festival, sponsored by Faith Formation. We invite you, if you like, to bring your own chairs. I took 40 chairs out yesterday. We took 6 tables out, so we have tables and chairs. But if you want to bring your own chair to sit around the bonfire while we do s'mores, please do so. Also, bring your own tableware if you like, cups, plates, silverware, stuff like that. We have some provided. But in the interest of trying to be green and more responsible and better stewards of the earth, we invite you to bring your own. And now, I do believe the man, the myth, has an addition to this.
Gosh, how do I live up to that? Just wanted to invite you. Barbara and I are happy to have you all come out, have a good afternoon. So if you want to come an hour early, that's okay too. It's advertised from 5:30 to 7:30, but there'll be outdoor games, and if you like to fish, you can bring your own fishing pole. We did get a paddle boat on the pond, so you can go paddle boating. So anyway, come out early if you want, and I think we'll have a great day. I think the wind speed's even going to be slower tonight, so we can light the fire. Yes.
Shane Kirshner, there's a little produce down in the lobby if you want to pick some up. That is all from the McPherson County Master Gardeners at the Extension Office. We produce most of the food for the farmers market each week. That is now over. We pulled all the plants yesterday, so that's why the abundance is there. If you don't take it, I'll try to maybe give it away at the school tomorrow, and then it'll probably return to the earth.
Thank you, Shane. I was wondering why all the green tomatoes were down there, and he said, well, it's October. It's October. So before I give the microphone to Lamont, I just want to see hands. Who is wearing their name tag today? Hey, that's an improvement. Okay, good.
Good morning, Lamont Rothrock from the Cedars. Wanted to tell you about a special event, but first of all, how many of you either work or live at the Cedars? All right. This Tuesday night at 6:30 in the banquet halls. They're at the event center. We're going to have a special event to talk about your retirement years, and this is also meant for when I say the word children, everybody thinks of small people, but if your parents are needing to look at retirement communities, this is a great opportunity. We're going to have guest speakers talk a little bit about financial planning for retirement years. We're going to have a realtor talk a little bit about the market right now and why it's such a good time to sell your home. And then we're going to talk about our independent living and the process and the cost and those kinds of things. And if you attend this event, there's special pricing that we're going to be doing for a period of time. So we're going to try to keep this at right about 60 minutes. So I really encourage you, if you've ever thought about it or if you think your parents should be thinking about it, come to the event center Tuesday night at 6:30.
And Bonnie?
Bonnie Fruth here. I want to acknowledge the weekend coming up, as Catherine just said, is a very, very busy weekend, homecoming weekend. And a couple of things that are in the newsletter that I want to highlight to you personally are happening on Friday from 3 to 4:30 in Friendship Hall. There's going to be an art reception. And during that time, Kevin Jones will be playing jazz music. So we know how fun that is. So I encourage you to go over to Friendship Hall on campus on Friday, 3 to 4:30. And then on Friday night and Saturday night at 7:30, the play, The Marvelous Wonderettes, is going to be in Brown Auditorium, and we know that students work really, really hard on plays and musicals and all kinds of things, and it would be really nice if we had a bigger crowd this time. Sometimes they play to a pretty small group, so on homecoming weekend, it'd be nice if we could have a big bunch of people over there. Thanks.
Philip?
I'm pleased to announce that I have 3 special guests, Nancy from Manhattan, and my sister Sue and her husband Robin from Auckland, New Zealand.
I forgot to announce that my name is Ann Stover. And thank you, folks who are viewing online and on Channel 13. Let's take just a few minutes to greet each other. We have one more announcement. Bruce?
We want to give Bruce a moment on mission as he talks about the future of the church and what are some future big things happening in the church. Bruce, come on up and get the lectern. You're welcome.
Jerry, I'm not sure I know exactly what that's supposed to be. I came up to give a little public service announcement that builds on what was on the back of your bulletin. If you haven't had a chance to look at that yet, we're reminding folks of a couple of important days that are coming up, including tomorrow, Indigenous Peoples Day. I think that's probably for folks who prefer not to celebrate the old Columbus Day, the more imperial aspect of that occasion when Europeans first landed in the Caribbean area. You also see something about a day of trans remembrance on there. Well, I wanted you to know about something that's going on today. And among other things, today is Yorkshire Pudding Day, National Yorkshire Pudding Day. It's also National No Bra Day. I won't ask for anybody to raise their hand if they're celebrating that.
I love our church. I love our church. But
more importantly, and right along with some of those other really important reminders, I mean, I think of African American History Month in February. I think of Pride Month in June. We also have in October Pastor Appreciation Month, and today happens to be Pastor Appreciation Sunday. We truly are blessed with great pastoral leadership. I think we all admired Jerry's passion and outreach to the youth of this community. We see the fruits of his labor every Wednesday evening with persons who we maybe never see any other time than Wednesday, but are in our facilities and engaging in Christian education type activities because of Jerry's outreach. We also have fantastic church leadership and I think visionary leadership from Pastor Catherine. These are changing times for us, as we know church isn't the same as it was 4 or 5 years ago. The pandemic was responsible for some of that, but there are just cultural changes taking place. And one of the things I've learned to appreciate about Catherine is the vision that she has for helping us be the church into the future. And as leadership team chair, I suppose one of the things I've become much more aware of is how well these two work together. They have very different gifts. You might have noticed that. They have very different gifts, but they have learned to collaborate and work their strengths, and they make a fantastic team together. And so on behalf of all of you sitting out there and on behalf of leadership team, I have just a little token of appreciation for Pastor Catherine and Pastor Jerry. I did not know that.
And now let us quiet our hearts and worship God.
I know it's not necessarily highlighted in the bulletin, but I'm going to invite us to stand for the responsive call to worship and remain standing for the opening song. I believe our movement in worship not only gets our heart moving, but it kind of gets the brainwaves flowing and we become more receptive to all that is happening. Please join me. In a world ravaged by war, in cities undermined by racism, in homes tormented with apathy, anger, and a frenetic pace, we cry, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from helping me, from the words of my groaning? Our schedules offer testimony to our frantic search for meaning, getting ahead, getting healthy, getting religion. Oh my God, I cry by day, but you do not answer. And again, I cry by night, but you do not answer. Slow us down, loving God. Let us be still in your presence. You remain present and holy, the great I am. In you, our ancestors trusted, and you delivered them. To you they cried, and they were saved. In you they trusted, and were not put to shame. Be near to us, God, as we approach you in trust. Please be seated. And as you find your seats, will the young ones come forward for the children's story?
You're still a young one. Hey guys, how's everybody? Everybody good? Oh, you've got your pretty tiara on today. I love it. I love it. So, everybody had a good week? Mm-hmm. Did anybody have a lousy week? Did anybody have a lousy day? No? That's amazing. That's great. Have you ever had a bad day before?
Uh-huh.
Have you? Have you ever had a bad day? I'm glad to hear that.
But today's a bad day for me because I have a cold.
You have a cold, so today is kind of a bad day for you then. But I'm glad you're here. Are you going to come out to our place later? Play? Maybe? Okay, I hope you do. Well, you know what? I have a story today, and I bet you know this story.
Oh, yeah, I know that too.
Yeah, you know this story. Do you know this story?
No.
Oh, it's Alexander and the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. So, tell me what happens in our story.
I kind of forgot it, except
You kind of remember it, though, but you forgot all the details. Yeah, that's good. I went to sleep with gum in my mouth. And now there's gum in my hair. And when I got out of bed this morning, I tripped on my skateboard, and by mistake, I dropped my sweater in the sink while the water was running, and I could tell it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. I got to get all those words in, don't I? At breakfast, Anthony found a Corvette Stingray car kit in his breakfast cereal box, and Nick found a junior undercover agent code in his cereal box. But in my cereal box, I found cereal. I think I'll move to Australia. Think that's going to get him away from a bad day if he moves to Australia? In the carpool, Mrs. Gibson let Becky have a seat by the window. Audrey and Elliot got seats by the window, too. I said I was being scrunched. I said I was being smushed. I said if I don't get a seat by the window, I'm going to be car sick. No one even answered. I could tell it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. At school, Mrs. Dickens liked Paul's picture of the sailboat better than my picture of the invisible castle. Could she like it if she couldn't see it? No. At singing time, she said I sang too loud. At counting time, she said I left out 16. Who needs 16 anyway? I could tell it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. I could tell because Paul said I wasn't his best friend anymore. He said Philip Parker was his best friend and that Alberto Moyo was going to be his next best friend, and I was only his third best friend. I hope you sit on a tack, I said to Paul. I hope next time you get a double-decker strawberry ice cream cone, the ice cream part falls off the cone part and lands in Australia.
Why did you say Australia?
I don't know. He seems to think that's the place to go. And there were 2 cupcakes in Philip Parker's lunch bag. Albert got a Hershey bar with almonds. Paul's mother gave him a piece of jelly roll that had little coconut sprinkles on the top. Guess whose mother forgot to put in dessert? It was a terrible, horrible, very bad day. That's what it was, because after school, Mom took all of us to the dentist. Dr. Fields found a cavity just in me. Come back next week and I'll fix it, said Dr. Fields. Next week, I said, I'm going to be in
Trouble.
Australia. On the way downstairs, the elevator door closed on my foot while we were waiting for my mom to go get the car. Anthony made me fall where it was muddy, and when I started crying because of the mud, Nick said I was a crybaby. And while I was punching Nick for saying I was a crybaby, my mom came back with the car and scolded me for being muddy and fighting. I'm having a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. I told everyone, and no one even answered. That just makes it even worse, right?
Yep.
So then we went to the shoe store to buy some sneakers. Anthony chose white ones with blue stripes. Nick chose red ones with white stripes. I chose blue ones with red stripes. But then the shoe man said, we're all sold out. They made me buy plain white ones, but they can't make me wear them. When we picked up my dad at the office, he said I couldn't play with his copying machine, but I forgot. He also said to watch out for the books on his desk. And so I was so careful as could be, except for my elbow. He also said don't fool around with his phone, but I think I called Australia. Dad says, please don't pick him up from the office anymore. It was a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. There were lima beans for dinner, and I hate lima beans. There was kissing on TV, and ooh, I hate kissing. My bath was too hot. I got soap in my eyes. My marble went down the drain. I had to wear my railroad train pajamas, and I hate my railroad train pajamas. When I went to bed, Nick took back the pillow he said I could keep, but the Mickey Mouse nightlight burned out, and I bit my tongue. The cat wants to sleep with Anthony, not with me. It's been a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. My mom says some days are just like that. Even in Australia.
Why did you always do that?
I don't know. I don't know.
Why did you say Australia 3 times?
Well, you know what? He must think, I know, he must think Australia's the place to go where everything's going to be good, huh? I don't know. Did you know that there was a man named Job? And his story is in the Old Testament of the Bible. And he also had a very bad, no good, horrible day. But it was more than just a day. Okay? Yeah. I'm not sure, but it was a long time. You want to hear the story? Okay. Job was a great man. He was honest. He was good. He honored God and not evil or bad things. He had lots of children, animals, and helpers. One day, Job lost everything he had. He lost his children, his animals, his helpers, everything. Then he got these terrible sores all over his body. Job's friend said he must have done something very bad, and God was angry with him, and God was going to punish him. But we know that's not true, right? That's not how God works, okay? Even Job's wife told him, curse that God. Don't follow him anymore. Don't be faithful. Don't love him. God has done this to you. But you know what? Job didn't do that. Job kept on loving God, and he kept worshiping God, even through all of his troubles. And in the end, Job ended up with everything he had back again. He had faith in God, and he knew even though he was having a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad life, God was still with him, and he still loved God. Okay? When you have a horrible, what? Say it with me. Terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. It happens, just like Alexander's mom said, right? But who is always with us? God. God was with Job. God is with us. It doesn't mean God's going to take those horrible things away from us. No, because it happens. But sometimes that's just the way it is. But if we remember that God is always with us, with Alexander and with Job, we're going to be okay. It may not be easy, but we're going to be okay. All right? I have a color page for you today. Okay? It is a picture of Job. And remember I said that he had these sores on his body? So that's what you're going to see. If you want to take it? That's what you're going to see in that picture, just in case you're not sure what it is, okay? So remember, we are the lucky ones because we have who with us? God. God's with us. And see you next week. I hope you have a really good next week, okay?
Thank you for your continued financial donations. You may give online at macbrethren.org. That's maccobb@macbrethren.org. If you are worshiping with us in person, you may place your gift in the offering box at the back of the sanctuary. Just slip it through the slot in the top of the box. Or you may mail your gift to the church office at 200 North Carey Street, McPherson, Kansas 67460. or hand deliver your check to the church office. Just push it through the mail slot at the education building. If you join our worship from afar, please donate to local needs in your area. Thank you for sharing.
Our opening text, scripture, comes from the book of Job, Job 23, 1 through 9, and 16 through 17. This is one of my favorite sections in the Hebrew canon. It's where Job is completely vulnerable and honest and transparent about how he's feeling towards God. And I think it gives us an example of God is big enough and loving enough to welcome and to hear our laments, our groans, our complaints. Then Job replied, "Even today, my complaint is bitter. God's hand is heavy on me in spite of my groaning. If only I knew where to find God. If only I could go to God's dwelling. I would state my case before God and fill my mouth with arguments. I would find out what God would answer me and consider what God would say to me. Would God vigorously oppose me? No. God would not press charges against me. There the upright can establish their innocence before God, and there I would be delivered forever from my judge. But if I go to the east, God is not there. If I go to the west, I do not find God. When God is at work in the north, I do not see God. When God turns to the south, I catch no glimpse of God. God has made my heart faint. The Almighty has terrified me. Yet I am not silenced by the darkness, by the thick darkness that covers my face." And now, friends, will you please join me in our unison prayer inspired by Psalm 22 and Habakkuk 1 through 4. Please pray with me. Living God, we come to you now in wonder. We know of your works as creator, upholder, indweller, lover of all. We have known you in our own time, in our own lives, in the lives of our neighbors. But, living God, we also come to you in anger and despair. We look out and see children dying of hunger. We see nations torn apart by war. We see greed and corruption blighting the lives of millions as the earth slowly dies. When we look within, we see our complicity in much of this. We see our compromised lives. We see our broken hearts and broken promises. As we face unrepentant evildoers who implement injustices, we ask, where were you, God, when all this went so wrong? Hear us as we lift our voices to you and cry, "Oh God, why have you abandoned us?" We wait and we yearn to understand. Help us, God.
And our second lectionary text for the day comes to us from the Psalms of King David. We know from our journey with King David this summer that sometimes things went well for David and sometimes they did not. So hear David's lament. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me, so far from my cries of anguish? My God, I cry out by day or by night, but you do not answer. I am not silent, but I find no rest. Yet you are enthroned as the Holy One. You are enthroned on the praises of Israel. In you, our ancestors put their trust. They trusted you. You delivered them. To you, they cried out and were saved. In you, they trusted and were not put to shame. But I am a worm and not a man, scorned by everyone, despised by the people. All who seek me mock me. They hurl insults, shaking their heads. He trusts in God. They say, let God rescue him. Let God deliver him, since God delights in him. Yet, O God, you brought me out of the womb. You made me trust in you, even at my mother's breast. From birth, I was cast on you. From my mother's womb, you have been my God. Do not be far from me, for trouble is near, and there is no one to help. Many bulls surround me, strong bulls of Bashan encircle me, roaring lions that tear their prey open their mouths wide against me. I am poured out like water. All my bones are out of joint. My heart is turned to wax and melted within me. My mouth is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth, and you lay me in the dust of death. When we gather together in worship, when we gather with anyone, talk to someone on the phone, meet someone on Zoom, FaceTime with someone. When we gather, we often formally or informally take time to catch up, even if briefly. Sometimes we do a quick, hey, good to see you, how are you? And sometimes we listen to the response. Sometimes it's a more intentional, hey, we haven't talked in ages. Tell me, what's new in your life? Sometimes, like in youth group, it's a very intentional go-around of sharing highs and lows of the week. Or you might be in a training or study group that regularly meets and starts with a weekly check-in. We do that because we're human, and that's what humans do. We connect one with another, and we have been doing that since the dawn of time. Often, the responses to these queries land in one of four categories. Think about the interactions in your own life when you check in with someone. Does your question get a reply that shares facts with you, shares celebrations with you, shares laments and sadnesses, or angers? Hi, good to see you, how are you? Might get a fact. Good, I've been on a road trip to see the aspen in Colorado. Hi, good to see you, how are you? Tell me what's new. Oh, I'm good. I've been on a road trip to Colorado to see the aspen. The timing was perfect. The colors were at their peak. We had good weather on the entire trip. You got a celebration and a fact. Hi, good to see you. I'd love to chat. Highs, lows, do you have time to talk? Oh, I'm good. I've been on a road trip to Colorado to see the aspen. Fact. The timing of the trip was perfect. The colors were at the peak. We had good weather the entire trip. Celebration. Lament. It was bittersweet. Last year, my mother was still living, and we took her with us. So it was a bit melancholy this year. And maybe, and I'm still just so angry about how her death happened. It's not fair. She should still be alive. These responses when we communicate with one another are, of course, extremely generalized. And yet, almost all interactions can be put into those four categories: fact, celebrations, laments, angers. All we need to do is open one of our devices and read our feed to check out this reality. This week I got facts. You have an update. Would you like to install now? Click here. I have a friend who got this document. Here are 32 pages of your new mortgage. It requires your signature in 3 places, your initials in 8. Please read the entire document before signing. Although we all know what's going on with facts, here's this quote from Charlie Warzel. He's a staff writer for The Atlantic. This reality fracturing that we are currently experiencing is the result of an information ecosystem that is dominated by platforms that offer financial and attentional incentives to lie and enrage, to turn every tragedy and large event into a shameless content creation opportunity. This collides with a swath of people who would rather live in an alternate reality built on distrust and grievance than change their fundamental beliefs about the world. End quote. Depending on how we feed our algorithm, and you better believe every click you make, you are feeding your algorithm. I can tell when my children or my spouse have been shopping, and I can tell what they're shopping for, because all of our media is interlinked. I did get celebrations this week. My CBS feed reported the Northern Lights made an incredible display over much of the United States on Thursday. Here's where you might find them. My Associated Press feed on Friday reported, with pictures, it was great, Alaska's National Parks Fat Bear Week celebrated this month. It has captivating live stream camera footage that caught the chubby predators chomping on salmon and fattening up for the winter. I spent a while down that rabbit hole. But we also clearly get feeds that are laments, lots and lots of laments, because there's a lot that is hard and sad and tragic in this world. And as we are standing 23 days before a general election to pick the next US president, we also get a lot of anger. Lots and lots and lots of anger and vitriol. If you were in a high school communications or media class and we were learning about the influence of media on our lives, I might assign you the task of systematically tracking the type of communication you are receiving on your devices. What are you getting on network TV, if you watch it ever, on your streaming devices, on podcasts, on newscasts, through advertisements, through TikTok, through Reddit, through Facebook, through X? What are you getting? Put a tally mark in one of those 4 columns. Are you getting fact, celebration, lament, anger? Everyone undertaking this assignment would, in likelihood, return tallies that show the same bell curve. And at the apex of the curve would be lament, quickly in line with anger. Not fact, not celebration, but lament at the top of the bell curve. Currently, the overwhelming messages we receive are lament because life right now is overwhelming. Politics, weather, how humans do and don't treat one another, how we treat the earth, how we treat animals. Is life truly more sad right now than it's ever been in history? Is there more lament than ever before, or is that just what sells and feeds the algorithm? There's a bigger question for the social scientists in our midst. What we do know from our lived reality is that there is sadness, there is anger, and we're not sure how that's going to play out in the long run. When we turn to the Bible, both ancient in the Old Testament and newer, if you can call it newer, in the New Testament, we find an eerie relevance. When we look at the feed from the Bible and we analyze what's being communicated, we also find facts and celebrations and laments and anger. I don't know how many of you at some time in your life committed yourself, I'm going to read through the Bible. And then you start to read and you get to the begats, the facts of the begats, and you're like, maybe I'm not going to read through the Bible. How many times do we reach to the Psalms for the joyous expression of living in this awesome creation? From the Abrahamic lament, Abraham and Sarah, of their lament of the experience of being without children. Job's lament, David's psalm, lament. In the Old Testament, we hear the anger of the failures of leadership and leaders, the angers of warring people, the angers of the kings who did not succeed. In the New Testament, we hear the frustration and anger of Rome, of the Sadducees, of the Pharisees, as the radical upside-down teachings of Jesus threw them all off balance, confused them, and made them really afraid that they were going to lose power. Today, right now, I want to zero in on lament. That's where our lectionary text takes us today. I want to talk about lament in modern culture. Lament is a word we don't often use, but it expresses our sorrow, our sadness, our grief, our anguish, our heartache. When we are sad, when we lament, we feel unhappy, miserable, heartbroken. To lament is to moan, to wail, to hurt. Lament, be very sure, is a very, very, very different word than complain. When we lament, we speak our misery, we moan our grief. But when we complain, we accuse, we point fingers, we criticize, we denounce, we oppose. Was Job lamenting or complaining? Talk to Charlotte Lowen. She's done a great study on Job, and she shared that with us during COVID. I don't know if you remember sitting out on the sidewalk in 100-degree weather, talking about Job as we lamented the heat. Maybe we complained about the heat. A complaint is a statement that a situation is unsatisfactory, unacceptable. It's a grievance, it's a criticism, but a lament is a passionate expression of our grief and our sorrow. To lament is to mourn, to weep. To hear that contrast a little bit better, I want to share words from another pastor's sermon. This is somebody who I have radically different theology in contrast to. I think it's always good to go out there and listen to what you are not, right? To try and understand what you are not. This is a snip of a sermon. It's not actually a quote. It's my notes that I took on these thoughts of the difference between lament and complaint. He has since retired from when I took these notes. He and his spouse were the co-founders and co-pastors of a megachurch in California and Twin Cities Church in Grass Valley. This church and its network is truly one of the non-denominational megachurches. If you study the characteristics of a successful megachurch, this is one that pops on the list. 4 years ago, before he retired, he talked about lament and complaint, and here are some of my notes from his message. Here is the clarification between lament and complaint. Some people see nothing but bad in a season of disruption, which seems to cause them to become a complainer or a victim. Complainers believe that if they make enough noise that someone, God or someone else in power, will notice them and fix the circumstance that created such an inconvenience for them. Lamenters believe that if they share their deep sadness and grief, that someone, God or someone who cares, will notice them and offer to walk with them and carry their burden with them. To complain is to be a squeaky wheel, one that demands it be fixed. To lament is to seek to discover empathy, to seek to walk together and carry our burdens together. That's the end of my notes that I will share today on that. Another interesting rabbit hole that I chose not to go down today is information from, I told you I'm doing recent training in nonviolent communication. Because of that training, I'm doing some supplemental work in the arena of empathy. There is interesting and helpful to me research and real-life experience of people who are practicing and researching and contrasting and utilizing the difference between emotional empathy and cognitive empathy. Emotional empathy and cognitive empathy. And if you want more information, call me, because as Anabaptists who believe in peace, it's an interesting discussion. There's a brief TED Talk that I can link you to tell you more. But let's go back to where we were. Complainers want someone to come in and save the day and relieve their angst because they deserve it. Lamenters cry out their grief and sadness and suffering, the experience they're having. They experience relief when they share in partnership, compassion, empathy, shared grief. How do we personally? It's a good question to ask. Am I complaining or am I lamenting? How do we as a church function? Are we complaining or are we sharing our lament with one another? And what does God call us to do? In personal conversations and news feeds and politics and religious writings, maybe it's just me, but I seem to feel like there's an uptick of complaint, of blaming many things that are so wrong on someone else. One of the places that gets my ire up is I hear blame being laid on Generation Z. I suspect I hear this complaint and blame more acutely because both of my adult children are part of that generation. So this blame feels like a bit of an attack on them. And from my perspective, knowing two great adults, I don't agree. And I don't think they deserve that. In fact, from my biased perspective, the opposite is indeed true of them and their circle of friends, and they're not friends. I see and hear such hope from them. Infectious positivity. It pulls me out of my complaints. Sometimes one of my kids says, "Really, Mom? Really? Do you hear yourself?" Sometimes it pushes me deeper into owning my own lament so that I can move through my lament to action. In June of last summer, not this summer, but the summer before, there was an article in Fortune magazine, and it said this: Gen Zers have been stereotyped in so many ways. They are called lazy, quiet quitters, immature freeloaders who live with their parents, a generation who spends too much money on things like avocado toast. So are Gen Zers complainers or lamenters? This generation of Zers is also being blamed for a lack of religious values and attendance. And the criticism predicts that it will be Generation Z who will be the end of the church as we know it. Rather than instant labeling what they are doing, might it be useful if we stepped back and took a longer and deeper look into their generation? What are their foundational attitudes? What's really at play here in this generation? To do this, I want to use words from a TED Talk that just happened in May of this year. She's an influencer. She has a podcast and a website. Her name is Justine Daniel Reyes. She's Filipino. She goes by Danny. She's a researcher. She's a licensed psychometrician. She's one of those people who's young, and I can't believe she's already accomplished so much. She's an academic. She's a content creator. And her talk was entitled, How Gen Z's Delulu Culture Impacts Their Reality. This is information from her talk, and I quote, "Live, laugh, love. The Gen Z version of that is the phrase, be delusional, which means dream big, defy limits. Don't let any barrier hold you back. A more catchy way of saying be delusional is to say the delulu is the solulu, which means delusion is the solution. Gen Zers were born, you know, these generations kind of slide, but essentially they were born in 1997 to 2012. So right now, Gen Zers are from 12 to 27 years of age. And they are often also defined as digital natives. They grew up at the dawn of the internet. They've never lived when there wasn't internet. Contrary to what you may have heard, there's research coming out of Stanford, a respected professor, Dr. Roberta Kratz. She describes Generation Z as a generation that deeply cares about others, cares for diverse community, is highly collaborative, is highly social, values authenticity. She also says this generation is highly practical because they have inherited global issues, climate change, political tensions, economic insecurities that force them to make their decision-making rooted in reality. Justine Daniel Reyes, Danny, says, this is why stepping into Delulu time, time where we can intentionally be delusional, is so wonderful. It allows them to step into fantasy space where they can think about possibilities, where they can ask, what kind of lives could we live if the current circumstances were not such an issue? Instead of thinking about what is impossible and complaining, It gives them a space to consider what's I'm possible, and gives them space to collectively lament their sadness and grief and look to one another to share the burden and ask, what is I'm possible? What is you possible? I don't know about you, but to me it's helpful to hear this generation described in this way, because they may not call it religion, they may not call it spirituality, but what is being described is what we understand to be covenant. Working together, living together, supporting one another. God welcoming our lament, our sharing of sorrow and grief, facing the trials before us, collaborating, working in community, being present for one another. It sounds to me like they do get religion. They do understand what Jesus says. And we're preaching it, and they're modeling it. Danny, as she is fondly referred to, goes on to say this: when Generation Z is delusional, when they lament and share their mutual grief, when they look and say, I'm possible, you're possible, they are criticized because they are seen as unrealistic, lazy, selfish, never going to grow up people. When they are practical and decide to put off getting married, decide to put off perhaps indefinitely having children, which, by the way, is not to be childless but child-free, when they don't settle into a lifetime career, when they don't buy a house, those are not negative things. Those are them being delulu. Rather than hearing their lament, their sadness, their caution, they are judged. They are not heard as they consider how their lives will impact climate change, how mobility and trying to consider another person in their life is important, how economics plays into whether to have a family or not, how economics and climate change and politics inform whether they buy a house, what might happen in a divorce, a hurricane, a crash in the market, a bomb dropping, civil war. I'm hopeful. I called my kids. I ranted and raved. Hey, y'all. They're like, yeah, we know, Mom. Now, when people complain about Generation Z, and many of you who are on the other end of that generation fit that profile as well, those who are still younger than that generation fit that profile, it makes me hopeful because they are changing the pattern of how we function. Rather than complaining, they are lamenting. They're sharing their angst, bearing one another's burdens, making families of intention, buying houses in groups, having friendsgiving meals. They are very, very practical. They are balancing that practicality with moments of joyous delulu, where they imagine a different existence, a what-if existence. It's not a pathological, delusional state. It's a healthy, hopeful state. It's a refusal, like Jesus, to accept the status quo. Don't put up with that the rest of your lives, said Jesus. Everyone's welcome at the table, and we're going to invite them. It's a hopeful perspective that Jesus brought. Let's stand it on our heads. Let's tell the woman at the well that she is welcome. It's a belief in something bigger than themselves. It's building a future not based on survival and success. It's building a hope, a future of courage, of shared lament, of shared solutions, liberation for all, hope for all. Sunday after Sunday after Sunday, 52 times a year, we preach and teach this message of hope that God brings to us through the life and teachings of Jesus. And it seems to me that Generation Z has heard it and is living it and is practicing this belief. Jesus was delulu. He embraced his lament in community. He embraced his firm commitment to and belief in a future for all. one where all God's people coexisted and were invited to the table, one where all creation danced in harmony. From the cross, Jesus cried out in lament. At 3 p.m, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. My God, why have you forsaken me? I don't think Jesus was complaining, accusing, criticizing, expecting someone to fix it. I think Jesus was lamenting, speaking and crying out his grief and sadness in partnership with compassion and empathy with us. Jesus modeled the delulu is the salulu. He shared grief, he shared journey, he shared being present with one another, creating space for all people to be seen and heard, for all people to share equally, for all people to dream and hope, for all people together to experience the fullness of God's good creation. Jesus knew that we are called to companion one another, emotionally empathize with one another, so we might carry the burden together, so we might dream together and hope together, so we might bring about God's realm on this earth. So let's work hard to stop complaining. Let's shut down our expectation that we deserve for someone or something to come and rescue us. I encourage you to embrace your lament. Together, let us grieve. Together, let us hope. Together, let us live the conviction that Delulu is the Salulu. I pray it might be so. Amen. Please rise for our sending song and words. accept these words as we go back out into the ordinariness of our lives. God calls us to model the life and living of Jesus, to live anew, so we might, with all creation, have life and have it abundantly. So we and all of creation might be people who seek to be understood and understand, who receive help and offer help, who listen and are heard, who live in mutuality and covenant one with the other, who lament, are delusional and hopeful. Jesus lives. God's reign will be realized when we express both our practical lament and our hope for the future. When we trust in God, may we answer God's call. Go forth. Amen.